17 U.S.C. 107 federal law allows citizens to use copyrighted media for fair use. That is criticism, news reporting, teaching, and parody.
I'm an American.
Kuma, Yahweh, we are put so you beaka, we are Rusumi Feneka, Lifaneka. Kuma, Yahweh, we are put so all your beaka, we are Nusumi Feneka, Lifaneka. Kuma, Yahweh, we are put so you beaka, we are Nusumi Feneka, Lifaneka. Arise of you, O Yahweh. Let your enemies be scattered, and let those that hate thee flee from before thee. Let all of Yasharah, Yisrael, who love, worship, and praise Yahweh, give him thanks by saying Hallelujah.
Welcome to Into All Truth. My name's Rachel, and thank you so much, all of you, for your prayers and your words of encouragement, and for signing up for memberships and subscribing for free to intoalltruth.net, where we offer various products, but also, most importantly, our virtual calendar and Chaya Eat Life and Fast Life Hebraic Lifestyle book, so that you can walk in righteousness, so that you can walk the ancient path and keep the Moedim. May the Spirit of truth, the Ruach HaKodesh, break up the fallow ground of your heart, and may the seed of righteousness be sown in your heart, so that Ruach HaKodesh can lead you into all truth and show you things to come. In the name of Yahushua HaMashiach. You don't know how much your support means, so I thank you so much for it. There appeared another wonder in the heaven, and behold, the great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his head.
Stolen identity, a lock without a key. We've been the butt of the joke throughout history. Yasharel, know thyself 12 tribes. Yah's heard our cry, true Hebrew Israelites.
Imagine that when Esau finally broke the yoke of Israel and Jacob off of his neck, he raised himself up as a false Christ, Esau's Christ. Of course, we know the prophecy to Abraham was this: know for a surety that your descendants will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And of course, the 400 years is depunct here. And also that nation whom they serve will I judge, and afterwards shall they come out with great possessions or substance. And you shall go to your fathers in peace, and you shall be buried in a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall come out here again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. So who are the Amorites? We basically established that they are the fallen angel seed. They are the Canaanites, the Horites, the people of Mount Sier, anybody of fallen angel seed who has mixed in with them and descended from Canaan and the people of Mount Sier, also called Philistines. So that is all in part 1 of the series. So watch part 1, watch all parts, and of course you can always watch everything in 20-minute bites. Okay, you don't have to watch the whole thing all at once. Okay, so white giants, Canaanite Amorites, and white Egyptians. So once again, family, I am reviewing this. I am going over the white representatives of Canaan and, of course, Egypt and the giants and Horites in this particular series. It's the white ones I'm talking about. In my other videos, when I talk about the Arabs and Africa, I talk about the black ones and the black Egyptians. When I talk about the Asian Canaanites, I talk about the Asian Canaanites, okay? I haven't done an extensive video on the Native Americans except to talk about Chief Warhorse, and I go into the descendants of Israel who are amongst the indigenous people. So if you're indigenous, I am not talking about the brown-skinned Native Canadians or Americans, okay? I am talking about the white ones. Okay, so there's white, there's brown, there's black. So family, please go and watch my videos on the lands of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. I keep saying this over and over again. Don't just watch the beginning of one video or look at the caption and then comment like so many of the trolls do. My whole series on the lands of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and my series on stolen identities, they all go into these identities, and I make it very clear that the lands of Shem was South America, the heart of the world, the southern part of South America. And those people drifted up into North America and Canada, and that the 10 tribes, or at least 6 of them, were brought by the Assyrians back to America during the Assyrian captivity. And that is approximately 500 to 700 BC. So, and that is how the laws, more Torah-like laws, were established in North America. And then there came the wave of the indentured servants who established those laws. There's also the indigenous people who are descendants of Ham, who tend to have this straighter hair. Okay, so I've gone into all of those videos. So please, for those of you who are just new to this channel or these teachings, I don't want to hear those, comments that have no research behind them or no perusal of my videos. Okay, so please watch those videos before you comment. Thank you so much. A lot of the black Hamites have mixed in with Shem and kept more of their Adamic image over in Africa. Okay, and then here in North America, Babylon, you have a lot of brown people, and you still have a lot of the Shemites, and you have the Israelites, and you have the Edomites, and you have the indigenous Native Americans who are brown or black skinned with kinky hair, or brown with kinky hair, or with straight hair, of course. You guys complain my teachings aren't simple enough, and what do I have to include the whole encyclopedia, an exhaustive report on everything and everything else study? No. I know the Hottentots are Canaanites. I know that the Khoisan are Canaanites. I know the Pygmies are Canaanites, okay? I even had one of the big teachers, this isn't right. I'm talking about the white ones. He's never talked about the white ones, okay? He always talks about these ones I just mentioned. So, so anyway, family, just, peruse the site before you make a comment. That's all I have to say. But I'm grateful because 99.9% of you guys are on code, and you're a blessing to me. So I'm definitely not talking about you. Love you guys all in Yahuwah. So anyway, let's keep going. So that's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the white ones. It's like the subject is white. Okay? So I don't mean to leave you out on purpose. I'm like, no, I do mean to leave you out on purpose because it's about the white ones. All right. So it's not excluding those other races or skin shades because they don't exist. The subject is the white ones. Okay. All right, and so I have these playlists on Canaan, which include the Asian, as I've said, the Black Egyptians, etc. All right, and so to review, the whiteness or the leprosy was a sign. So there was both whiteness in Noah that was a sign of things to come. All right, many babies are born white skinned or light, and then they get color as a melanin spot grows on them, or they just start to brown up. Okay, so he was not white. He was created perfect in his generations, and the sun and the earth, bereft of its trees and vegetation after the flood, would not have burned him because he had melanin. Okay, so leprosy is a sign of judgment. It strips you. Okay, and I'm not saying all white people have no melanin. They do. They just don't have as much. Okay, they're not leprous, but they are akin to being judged because of the lack of melanin. Okay, so they don't have resistance to the sun. And I gave all the examples of that in the previous lesson. Please go and watch the playlist on the white giants. I created one for people asking questions. Now, I want you to remember that Yah's plans are for good and not for evil. And they are for Israel first and then the Gentiles. And I want to reinforce that the dark melanin people are the children of Yah to a large extent. There are many grafted in as well, but the white skin is a disadvantage, clearly. Okay, we really see that with aging and with exposure to sun causing cancer. So, but Yah made a way in spite of this. And he did this despite what the enemy tried to do to the line of Japheth and even the fallen ones. Okay, so please remember and focus on the fact that Yah's character is good in all of this. So we're just trying to figure out what happened and who these families are. Okay, so we can have better understanding of the world that we're living in and what to do. Now, I'm going to go into my theories again based on these etymologies. And remember, these are my theories. They're not necessarily facts, but I will use, history and scripture, all right, and word studies to do that, and images and celebrities and culture, okay? And we're going to discuss more of the giants among David's mighty men and why these families feel they have a claim to the Davidic lineage, and we'll review the Greeks being the descendants of Canaan again because David's mighty men were those people. And we're going to review On again. We always got to review On, okay, the lands of On. And then there's also some curious stories about Canaan having fathered Nimrod, so by the Arabs and stuff. So we'll also just check that out. And then we're going to look into the cultural and spiritual habits of the Canaanites and how they might be reflected amongst people in Hollywood or celebrities or these elite families today. And we'll just go into some more of the elite and celebrity families, okay? So let's get into it. All right, so the children of the fallen, we know Genesis 6:2, the sons of Yah saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took wives of all which they chose. And Yahuwah said, my spirit shall certainly not remain among these men forever, because they're flesh, but their days shall be 120 years. And now the giants were upon the earth in those days. This is 6 and 5. And after that, when the sons of Yahuwah were wont to go into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them, those were the giants of old, men of renown. So of course this is like, you see, it's a very young girl, right, with a man. So it's already we see the pedophilia coming in these ancient statues and pictures. So they are violating the law, and this was not Yah's will, and this was the reason for the destruction. Okay, this is the reason for the destruction of the earth. We all know that. And what Yah did, Yahuwah said unto Raphael, this is from Enoch, bind Azazel hand and foot and cast him into the darkness and make an opening in the desert, which is in Dudael, and cast him therein and place upon him rough and jagged rocks and cover him with darkness and let him abide there forever and cover his face that he may not see light. And on the day of the great judgment he shall be cast into the fire. So Dudael and these other angels, there's another one who's hung upside down, eternally falling, according to the Muslims, with one eye closed and one eye open. So this is the prison of the fallen angels, the evil watchers, okay, that we just spoke of. So we know they were put into prison. And we know that out of them came the fallen ones, okay? So before this destruction, what we have to understand is that exactly what happened to Cain, okay, as a judgment relating to the whiteness of the skin, and how the children of the fallen, or the children who follow the ways of Hasatan, engender or take on this whiteness of skin. We looked at Cain and how he was made white, according to the legends of the Jews, as part of his curse from Yahuwah, okay? And his generations were also made white, and anybody who killed him would be made white, all right? And also we referred to it in the book of Lamech as well. And Lamech is the one who actually wound up killing Cain by accident. And so it's the same curse of a whiteness or leprosy in the skin from the words, the land. Talked about the fact that Yah never intended to mix humans and animals in this realm, and that was not his perfect will, despite this scripture that says eventually he would do it. It was not his perfect will. So I want to thank Big Boss for this. I got all these references from him, and so I just want to say thanks to him and his channel for this. So just a quick review of the Amorites and Hittites, just so you can physically identify them here. So here we see Ragnar Lothbrok is, of course, the typical Dane or Swedish king. He's played by Travis Fimmel. We see Fimmel in his words, so the Fimmels are in Denmark. And we see El as in angel in his last name. Same with Jim Caviezel, is more the typical Hittite or person of Chittim. He's obviously calls himself Italian. Those are the Hittites. And he has the smaller jaw, okay? And then the long-headed, longer jaw comes with the Dane. So the Dosi Hesephalic head is also common to the Hebrews, so it can be a little confusing. And they're also called Illyrians, so like Iranians. All right? The Dardanians are Iranians, a group of Indo-European people who inhabited the Western Balkan Peninsula in ancient times. All right? And along with the Thracians and the Greeks. So we see these are the Greeks, and which become the Danes, right? And so we're going to see as we go through and forwards through this study. All right, so this is called The Hittites, The Story of a Forgotten Empire by Archibald Henry Sass, published in 1890. And so it talks about the Hittites of the Bible. The Hittites and Amorites were therefore mingled together in the mountains of Palestine like two races, which ethnologists tell us go to form the modern Celt. But the Egyptian monuments teach us that they were of very different origin and character. The Hittites were a people with yellow skins and mongoloid features, whose receding foreheads and oblique eyes and protruding upper jaws, so now it's not the lower jaw, it's the upper jaw, are represented as faithfully on their monuments as they are on those of Egypt, so that we cannot accuse the Egyptian artists of caricaturing their enemies. So it tends to be a weaker lower jaw, stronger upper jaw. If the Egyptians have made the Hittites ugly, it is because they were so in reality. The Amorites, on the contrary, were tall and handsome people, and they are depicted with white skins and blue eyes and reddish hair, all the characteristics, in fact, of the white race. Mr. Petrie points out their resemblance to the Dardanians of Asia Minor, who form an intermediate link between the white-skinned tribes of the Greek seas and of the fair-complexioned Libyans of northern Africa. The latter are still found in large numbers in the mountainous regions which stretch eastward from Morocco. Remember, that's where I talk about in my video on Africa and many others, reverse Pangea, that's where one of the Towers of Babel was, and that's connected to the Azores, okay? So their latter are still found in the large numbers in the mountainous regions which stress eastward from Morocco and are usually known among the French under the name of Cabales. Cabales. So here we have the word ball, right? And cabal. The traveler who first meets with them in Algeria cannot fail to be struck by their likeness to a certain part of the population in the British Isles. Their clear white freckled skins and their blue eyes and their golden red hair and tall stature remind him of the fair Celts of an Irish village when we find that their skulls, which are of the so-called docephalic or long-headed type, are the same as the skulls discovered the prehistoric chromalex of the country they still inhabit, and we may conclude that they represent the modern descendants of the white-skinned Libyans of the Egyptian monuments. Sorry about that. The white-skinned Libyans of the Egyptian monuments. In Palestine, we also still come across representatives of the fair-complexioned, blue-eyed race in whom we may see the descendants of the ancient Amorites, just as we see in the Kabyles, or Kabals, Kabbalah, right? Kabyles, the descendants of the ancient Libyans. We know that the Amorite type continued to exist in Judah long after the Israelitish conquest of Canaan. The captives taken from the southern cities of Judah by Shishak in the time of Rehoboam and depicted by him upon the walls of the great temple of Karnak are people of Amorite origin. Their regular profile of subaquiline cast, so that's more of the hook nose as well, as Mr. Tompkins describes it. Their high cheekbones and martial expression are the features of the Amorites and not of the Jews. The tallness of stature has always been a distinguishing characteristic of the white race. Hence, it was the Ananakim, the Amorite inhabitants of Hebron, seemed to the Hebrew species to be as giants, while they themselves were but as grasshoppers. Okay, that's in Numbers. Okay, and so they were an object of dread to their neighbors. So this is an idea of what they looked like or evolved into. I'm having a lot of our chocolate folks saying, oh no, the Egyptians were black. You still want to claim that black Egyptian thing. These are the white Egyptians, the white Canaanites, the white Amorites that I'm talking about in this video. And these are the Tartarians, the ones who came up through Mount Sier, really is their collective generations. And so if you need confirmation about where the Egyptian spirituality and where the symbolism comes from, it says in these Masonic books. And before I was like, no, it's coming from, we know that Abraham brought sciences to Egypt, etc., etc. So there was a lot that Israel did because Israel's the former of all things. But this is what the books of Masonry say about Egypt. The cradle of symbolism used in all Masonry is placed by many of the best authorities in that country which they believe was first inhabited, the plateau of Tartary. So that's in the north, in the regions of the north where all the Nordic people, where the Nords or the Normans were from, where they had to flee to, all of these Canaanites and everything, because they were banished from many lands, all right? And from there transmitted to this generation by the sages of India, Persia, Ethiopia, and Egypt. We are not indebted to either ancient Egypt for either religion or Masonry, but to America. You see, so this is the land of the Amorites and the white giants, okay? And so these are the fallen angel offspring getting in touch with the fallen angels again who brought all these technologies. Now, Yah had the angels teaching technology to mankind, and he put wisdom into the offspring of Israel and Abraham, right? So both of them kind of had a lot of understanding, just inherent. in the Israelites, and then these were taught it by their ancestors and maintained these traditions, the children of the fallen. So it's a combination of things. So this is in Oriental Masonry. I am, he said, and beside me there is no other. Then was he doomed to the earth and to ashes, as it was written. What are the proud? Earth and ashes. The beginning of sin is pride, being doomed to Tartarus and perpetual fire, having eternal punishment, not everlasting life. So that's how the fallen angels were punished, okay? But it says here in point 5, it is a fact that at Memphis, Egypt, in the pyramids, under the guidance of the kings, the mystic rites of masonry were worked by many thousands of years ago. But at that time, Egypt and the continent of America were one and the same. So this is all the stuff I've talked to you about America being Africa. And even the other continents were closer together. So in America, rediscovered in the 15th century and repopulated in the 17th, was recovered Egypt and the promised land, or the land of the constellation of the eagle. This is why you have Giselle Bunsen wearing the eagle on her head. These are the Amorites. This is the land of the eagle, is America and Egypt and Ham's land. Now, no matter how numerous or complicated the works of a lock may be, if but the right key be applied, the Great Pyramid proves to be the long-sought key to the mysteries at once of mythology, right? Foolish mythologies, foolish genealogies, and of great world religions. Especially interesting is the Americans in the year of the Columbian celebration of the 400th anniversary of the rediscovery of Americas. Okay, so once again proving that America was rediscovered, it was covered up in the past. And so even, the Israelites are schizophrenic. They want to insist that Ham was black. Yeah, in the beginning he was, but he got so mixed in with his religions and everything that this is what happened to them. They got all mixed in with the fallen angels and their offspring. Okay? See, this 1597-98 map of Africa was published by a Tartarian king. And what is this Tartarian king's name? We just read that there was always a ball. This was published by Battista and Galignani in Venice for a Tartarian king. Okay? Galignani. Just some more review from my White Giants videos. The German kings that we have in France and all these different cultures, these people that claim to be of the lineage of David, they actually are. But they are a mixture of the domain of the Vikings. And they have a strong bloodline for sure called the Star families. And they believe they are David's descendants. That they are a continuation of the line. They are the Vril. They say they are the continuation of the line of Jesus, the continuation of the line of David. And by that, they have the right to rule. They believe in the book of Revelation as well. They believe that the 1,000-year reign is now, and they believe that they are in charge of taking over the kingdom as the star families of this 1,000-year reign. Remember, I said this in the first part 1 of this video as well. So everything that they've done from the last time since the destruction of temple has been towards uniting the people in Israel and building a new temple. So Zionism is actually of the star families, and this is where you get Ashtaroth worship. Okay, and this is King Og of Bashan, the Atlanteans, etc., the Chaldeans. We already talked about the Hittite Uriah being in the midst of Israel and the husband of Sheba, but there was another giant who was in the midst of Israel. Archite Greek giants among the Hebrews. Archite Greek giants among the Hebrews. So David had at least 3 mighty men who were Canaanites, and of course one was a Moabite, and you were not allowed to permit the Moabites into the assembly of Yah. So they're equal almost to the Canaanites. And so it is noteworthy that at least 4 of David's mighty men were non-Israelites. Zelek the Ammonite, remember we already saw Ammonite, Uriah the Hittite, we already talked about him 2 episodes ago, Ithma the Moabite, and Hushai in 2 Samuel the Archite. And so these are Ammonites, Hittites, Moabites, Archites. Those are all Canaanites, descendants of the giants, okay? And Zelek the Ammonite was the armor bearer of Joab, the son of Zeruiah. Okay, so Israel definitely had a history through David of allowing these nations in among them. So we're going to see the Archites appear again in the house of David amongst his friends and mighty men, confirming that they are descendants of Canaan as the Archites in this genealogy, and also once again the name Ahawah, and then associating them all with the Ionians. So the Archites, again, as I said before, the giants, and there was one in the Bible, a famous one named Hushai the Archite, and he was a counselor and friend of King David. Okay? So Hushai, counselor and friend of King David, 1 Chronicles 27:33. Ahithophel was the king's counselor, and Hushai the Archite was the king's companion. So another name for Hushai is Hastings. We know there's a Hastings in Britain. There's Hastings families, okay? He was an Archite and a friend of David, the father of Banah, an officer of Solomon. Probably the same as Cushaway or Cushi, from hasty. All right, and then they say he's an Israelite. So that I think that's a different Hushai, right? But the word hasting is associated. So there may be, I don't know for sure, but an association with the British Hastings of today, right? And these Archite giant Hastings, okay? All right, so Ahiyawa, so this is another, they always say Hawa, forgive me Abba, and Yahweh. So we find out that Awan or Avan or Avon, Avon calling, Avon Cosmetics, means iniquity. And this was the wife and sister of Cain, the daughter of Adam and Eve. And in the book of Jubilees, she's called Awan, okay? Or Quelima. And she had a sister named Azura. All right? So this is where you get Awa or Awan from, okay? So we can see these connections again to Cain and the seed of the fallen. Even if it was in the pre-flood generation, it's always the same seed. So the V is the W in Hebrew, W. And we have the perfect example here of the mark created by Avon, Awan, right? Enoch 8. Makeup. Oh, I have Mac up there, but anyway, Mac's another word for it. The mark. And notice how they have a mark collection by Avon, right? The mark people. Book of Enoch chapter 8 says, and Azazel taught men to make swords, daggers, and shields and breastplates, and he showed them the things after these, the art of making them bracelets and ornaments, and the art of making up the eyes, and of beautifying the eyelids, and of most precious stones and all kinds of colored dyes, and the world was changed. And the world was changed. That was the consequence. So this is more of the culture of the Canaanites. All right, the marking of the eyelids, which we see with a lot of the Egyptian photos, right? Amongst those who believe that this is the land, that North America is Israel, that it's Egypt at the same time, though, because Egypt is Israel, all that kind of completely contradictory, confusing stuff that doesn't make any sense. They use this word Awa, which is the serpent god, okay? And so this was a kingdom lying to the west of the Hittite Empire. So those who say Ahiyawa, so Hayawa, right? Ahayawa, Ahaya, right? Or Awa, these who say this name, right, are associated with an ancient kingdom lying to the west of the Hittite Empire, which may have been Western Anatolia, one of the islands of the Aegean Sea. And the theory is that they were Archaeans of Homer, early Mycenaean Greeks. Okay, so the Archites are descendants of Canaan, and they are known to be the Greeks. So they're not Gentiles. Another theory represents them as the ancestors of the Trojans, right? They were a powerful seafaring people. So when you see seafaring, you know that it's marine kingdom, right? And Ahiyawa has been derived from Hittite texts. Okay, so this is Hittites, or brothers and sisters to the Archites, right? And so there's this document during the reign of the Suppilulimas. And this was in the 1300s, and there was a formidable kingdom which the Hittites had good relations with. And documents indicate members of the Ahiyawan royal family traveled to the Hittite capital to study charioteers' arts. And he was brought to the Hittite king. And then eventually they became a threat to the Hittite Empire during this reign. Okay? So this could just be the difference between the Greeks and the Romans, right? The Archean Greek, Achaeos, so we see here the Greeks are Archeans. Achaeos, identified in Homer with the Danaoi. All right, so who are we talking about? Dardanus, just before, Dardanus, Danaoi. So these are not Danites of the tribe of Israel. These are Danaoi, okay, descendants of Ham and fallen angels. And these are the Greeks who besieged Troy. And their area, as described by Homer, is the mainland and western isles of Greece. So these are the Greeks. These are fallen angels. They're not Gentile. They're not Japhet. Name Archite in the Bible. They're mentioned in the Bible. They were a Canaanite tribe. The Archites were a Canaanite tribe that lived close to Antioch. Okay? A Canaanite tribe who lived close to Antioch, Bethel, and Luz, and which were all assigned to the tribe of Joseph. And the name Archite looks strikingly similar to how someone from the city of Erech would be described. But Erech was a city in Babylon. Iraq. Moon City was a city in Babylon. Okay, and again, we're going to repeat. Hushai the Archite was a counselor and friend to David, and he was instrumental in bringing the insurrection of Absalom to a grinding halt. So you can see now this, by befriending David, they were grafted in to the kingdom of Israel. And this is why they claim rights to the line of David in the kingdom of Israel. So for some clarity again, let's review On again. Just going to review a little more of this history of what occurred in the West, but once again, watch my series on the lands of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The ones on America is Egypt. okay? Ancient chronology of the Onges or Iroquois Indians. Iraq Indians. The own guys, and the Iraqis Indians, okay? So now here's the same people, the Yagawehowi, okay? So these are Archites, right? Meaning real people, dwelt north of the lakes and formed only one continuation. So the lakes were one continuation, and after many years, a body of them settled in the river Kerouac, now the St. Lawrence. After a long time, a foreign people came by sea and settled south of the lake. It says 108 years before our era, the total overflow of the Tawanakas, nation of giants, came from the north by the king of the Onges, Don Tauha, and the hero Yatan. So this, I believe, is when they were kind of crunched down by the Edomites. The giants were destroyed, and then I think some of their descendants again were sent into the land of Shem, or the land of Israel, to masquerade as Israelites. American Antiquities, Tartarian Ondaga. Dagon is the fish god of the priests of Ons. Daggone it. They'll say dag because they're calling on their god, right? All right. Talks about in this how there was, when they came into these lands and they're recording what happened here, okay, it says that it's evident from ditches and entrenchments in the area, it's evident that a war was once waged here, and were we to conjecture between whom, we would say between the Indians and the Scandinavians. So there are more pure Hamites, or perhaps children of Japheth, who warred with the Scandinavians, okay? So when we were talking about how in came Ham and took over the land, perhaps of what you would call Japheth, Gomer, in the last account, Comerus, Gallus, Noah comes and finds out that Comerus or Gomer had been corrupted. All the youth were corrupted by Ham, okay? So there was a war between the Scandinavians and the Indians. Okay, Native Americans, maybe they're not Canaanites so much, maybe they're Japheth, they're Huns, combination of Japheth and the other Canaan, okay? There was a war between the Indians and the Scandinavians. And this was in the area of Onondaga. So priests of On and Dagon. And these lakes were called Cayuga, Seneca, and Oneida, and Erie. So they weren't always called the names that they're called now. Called Onondaga and Oneida. As it is known or not pretended that the Scandinavians did not make settlements on the continent earlier than 985, there cannot be a doubt that they had to fight their way among the Indians more or less, the same way as we did when we first colonized the coast of the Atlantic. I think it was earlier. Okay? This is fights perhaps between Japheth and Ham. Okay? But also I put here, there's a season when in came Alexander the Great, in came Esau, Edom, and removed all the giants, right? When they were covering up history much later. Remember, we talked about that when we talked about the descendant, Nehemiah Theodoric, in 775 AD. So this is at the time of Esau, Edom's reign, takes his swan boats, right? And he takes his swan boats and he goes and he gets King Augier and he takes him back to Britain. All right? And so it says also the Irish legends of Ragamon allude to this family of Og or Augean. So Ragnaroth, right? Remember how I just mentioned him before when we looked at that Travis Fimmel actor. So this is how everyone was removed and moved about, right? When we go and we look at the Archites, the Akkadian, Ptolemy was son of Arsinoe of Macedon, so Macedonian, that means massive, Sidonian. So there's a connection there to Sidon, who was one of the sons of Canaan, and by either her husband Lagus or Philip of Macedon, the father of Alexander. Okay, so Ptolemy of the Greeks was related to Alexander, and of course we know that Alexander was the offspring also of Esau, Edom. Okay, Esau, Edom. So these are the Hittites and Esau, Edom. We already went into this, but now we know the Macedonians were the Greeks. So we're going to find and learn that the Hittites, the Italians, and the Greeks were really the same people, essentially. And they are tied into the Hamitic lines, obviously through Canaan, but what we just read indicates they were tied in also through Ham, right? According to their historical books, written by their gods, okay? Now it says that the Achaeans, right, were of the four major tribes which the people of classical Greece divided themselves. So Achaeans. So that's like Anunnakis, okay? Along with the Aeolians. Now, have you ever had Aeola? You get that in mayonnaise. That's mayonnaise with garlic in it. Aeolians, Ionians, and Dorians. Picture of Dorian Gray, right? The guy who lived forever from drinking blood. According to the foundation myth formalized by Hesiod, their name comes from Archias, the mythical founder of the Archean tribe, who was supposedly one of the sons of Exuthus, brother of Ion, the founder of the Ionian tribe. Exuthus was in turn the son of Helen, the mythical patriarch of the Greek Hellenic nation. So these are the Greeks. The Archites, we're going to see the Archites are descendants, if we went through the genealogy, the Archites are Canaanites. So these are not Gentiles from Japheth. All right? Just like, so Japheth has been associated with the Canaanites and Hamites, just like Israel has been associated with the Canaanites and Hamites, because it's identity theft. So that's why they blur these lines. Okay? So according to the Tawagalawa letter, a fragmentary Hittite text from the mid-13th century BC, it's notable for providing a window into the relations between the Hittites and Greeks during the late Bronze Age, and for its mention of a prior disagreement concerning the city called Wilusa, generally identified with the archaeological site of Troy. So Helen of Troy, the Hellenists, we just went over that, right? Helene. The letter was written by a Hittite king to Ahiyawa around 1250 BC. In the letter, the Hittite king seeks for cooperation from the Ahiyawan king in suppressing an anti-Hittite activity in western Anatolia. All right, and his particular concern was the activity of a warlord named Paramarduk. So Marduk, okay? Paya, face of Marduk. So this is the Macedonians, who had recently fled away to Ahiyawa, a controlled territory, after leading an unsuccessful rebellion in Lucca. So Luke is also Lucifer, associated with Lucifer, right? So these are both the Greeks, the Hittites, they were both the Greeks and the Italians, kind of mixed together. They had battles with each other, but Arkite is another Canaanite. Okay? Not specifically a Hittite, but they did mix in together. Okay? We know their gods were the same. Now I wanted to explore this kind of curious theory that Canaan was the father of Nimrod, and only because it ties his sons or some of his offspring into Japheth and some of the more Nordic lines, and that's why I want to add this into the mix, just for the sake of interest and query and because of that tie-in. So, not to confuse you anymore, but there are accounts where Nimrod is listed as the son of Canaan, actually. And connected to that are the links between Nimrod and Gentile nations in the land of Japheth. So let's take a look at that. Because there is definitely a whiting out of the Gentiles of Japheth by other nations, and of course of the Canaanites by their own hand. So I'm not saying this is absolutely what it is, but saying that he is actually linked to Nimrod. Okay? So according to the Muslim historians, okay, this is this 10th century historian Masurdi recounts a legend making Nimrod, who built the tower and reigned over the Nabateans. All right, remember Nabal, so those are their prophets. All right, so he reigned as the first king of Babylon, dug all these canals. But he mentions in one book that he's of Cush, and then in another book he says that he was a son of Canaan. King Nimrod, son of Canaan, as one who introduced astrology and attempted to kill Abraham. So there's a little bit of blurriness around amongst the Muslims, who are really descendants of Ham as well, right? Then there's also a Hungarian legend of an enchanted stag, a white stag, Pharoh. So the white stag is symbolic of a silver stag of King Nimrod, or of giants, Nimrod the giant, descendant of Noah. Now they call him a descendant of Noah. Well, anyone who descends from Noah, even the grandsons, are considered sons of Noah. So your brother or sister, if you're Japheth, Ham, or Shem, would be a son of Noah, right? And so this is the first person referred to as a forebearer of the Hungarians. He, along with his entire nation, is also the giant responsible for the building of the Tower of Babel, the construction of which was supposedly started by him 200 years after the biblical event of the Great Flood. So this is what the Hungarians are saying, that he's the white stag and descendant of Noah and forefathers of the Huns. So we have the root word Hun there for Hungarian. So now when we look at Hun further down, please remember this. Now the Hungarian legends held that twin sons of King Rod, Hanur and Magor, were ancestors of the Huns and the Magyars, respectively, siring their children through the two daughters of King Dul of the Alans. So Allah, Alan, all right, Allah, Hala, all right, Aliyah, right? So the Alans, whom they kidnapped after losing track of the silver stag while hunting. Both the Huns and the Magyars historically attested skill with the bow and arrow, which were attributed to Nimrod. So these are some of his potential offspring, because he probably had a lot of wives. They usually were very promiscuous and multiplied wives. And it says the 16th century Hungarian prelate Nicholas Ohalis claimed Attila took for himself the title of descendant of the great Nimrod. So Attila the Hun. Now I'm bringing this up because I want you guys, when we get to the Huns, to remember this, okay? The demon Nyrki, figuring in the Finnish Kalevala, was a helper of Lemminkainen. So we have the word Canaan there, right? Cain. right? Seed of Canaan, white and leprous, right? Please remember this, is associated with Nimrod by some researchers and linguists. So there we have another example. This is all building a foundation, family, because I'm going to show you all the celebrities later that are connected with these names. The bull is the symbol. How many bison did they slaughter here? Right? It's a symbol of Egypt. It's a symbol of America.
The interbreeding of humanity and how the accounts explain that these crossbreeds were put into the positions of royal ruling power, almost as like demigods, middlemen between the gods, the Chickahuli, the reptiles, and the people. Those bloodlines, in my own research, became the European royal families and aristocracy, and today are the ruling, banking, business, and political and royal lines of the world. And the genealogy supports this increasingly. Is there a tradition also that the royal lines of Africa go back to the same source?
Please, you don't have to believe me. Go to Rwanda and there talk to the people there. They will tell you that the founding ancestors of their dynasties, the first kings who came from the sky, and they were called Imanugela, the ascending ones. Say, many African tribes believe that when the gods came down from the sky, they found human beings very, very stupid. And the human beings could not come before the gods in order to be taught. So what the gods did, and this is a story that you also find amongst the Dogoni people in West Africa, because the human beings were afraid of approaching these reptile gods. The reptile gods cold-bloodedly slaughtered one of their number and shed out its flesh with a specially gathered crowd of human beings. And these human beings then became the ancestors of our first great kings. Now say, African kings jealously guarded their blood.
If the royal lines of Africa claim descendants from the same source, basically, have those lines interbred as obsessively as the European aristocracy and royal family, and not bred outside of those lines?
Yes, sir. Royalty had to marry royalty. That was one of the strictest laws in ancient times.
Which is obviously where we get the term the divine right of kings from. It's not actually God, it's actually the gods.
Yes, sir, yes. Royalty intermarried with royalty.
So finally, let's look at some more of these cultural habits of the Canaanites that we find in the Hollywood culture. All right? Charlize Theron. And you notice her name, Pharoh. Pharoh. So I think the root of this is going to be Thor, the god Thor. And of course, On, priest of On. All right, Canaanite. And of course, she is Afrikaans from South Africa, where Transylvania. Now watch my Four Carpenters videos on Russians and Gentiles, and I go into the whole Transylvania, and how those are all Russian, Transylvanian, South Africans, and they're really Canaanites. Okay? So Transvaal, South Africa is where she was born. Transylvania, South Africa. All right? And so she is Afrikaans, and these are the movies that she's done: Prometheus, Mad Max, all kinds of things. Very early movies that involved a lot of kind of satanic things as well. It was a movie she did with Keanu Reeves, I believe, where she played his wife, and she was, it was all about the devil. And so Afrikaans, we have the word Kaan, of course, in Afrikaans. And so she is Dutch origin. And of course, we know all about the chocolate hands, and and I hate to bring it all up, right? But this is who she is a descendant of, and these Norse people, of course. Here's their genealogy. All right, here's her genealogy. Coat of arms for the family and family crest for Pharoh. Notice how he's snickering. This family crest and coat of arms, literally their introduction starts in 1884 to 87. All right, this is when they are collected in the Armorial General by Johann Baptist Reichstag. Now, I have shown you again and again in my Stolen Identities videos and my Prester John videos that the real Charlemagne was black. Okay, and we know that King James was black, etc., and so were his offspring. So this is Esau, Edom, taking over the empire of Israel, right? And so we know that these kind of Nordic people. Okay, one of the familiar members of the Elon family in South Africa is, of course, Elon Musk. He's from South Africa, just like Charlize Theron. Okay, and here's more Danish people. And so we know these Nordic people were not the original people, as I've explained in the last, and I continue to explain in this particular documentary. These are the Dardanians. All right? So it's only in the 1800s that they begin to appear. So it's not a good place to start. Right? It's better to go to something like the god Thor, Odin's eldest son and the strongest of gods, though not the wisest. Okay? God of thunder and the thunderclap, Proto-Germanic Thunras, from the Frisian thunder, Dutch. So that's the Dutch are the Afrikaans are largely the Dutch and Scandinavian. It's a Scandinavian god. And so that would probably be the best route. It's also tied to the word Thursday, right? Forgive me for saying all these words, Abba. And look, Thornaris Dagon. Dagon is the fish god of the Egyptians. Okay? So we're seeing all these connections. Roman Jupiter was identified with Germanic Thor. So remember, we're talking about how the Hamites and Ham and his offspring, one of their gods was named, he was named Jupiter, or one of his sons was named Jupiter. All right, and so here's also some words that come out of it, and it's considered the day of Zeus. Zeus, Seuss, pig. Okay, Thursday. And so when we look at the Norse god, all right, son of Odin, and he is related to Ragnarok, okay, Charlize Theron and her whole story, she has a whole story of patricide, all right, patricide. So either the fathers eat the daughters or the daughters eat the fathers, right? Now she has a legitimate story of self-defense and patricide, okay? So, but she says she ended this threat. Her father was a very sick man, and he was an alcoholic, and he was pushing through the door with a gun one day, and she was leaning against the door with her mom, and he shot through the door. And she said none of the bullets hit them. It was a miracle, but in self-defense, she ended the threat. And of course, she played Eileen Wuornos, this female serial killer, as well. All right, and of course, Eileen Wuornos was subject to a lot of sexual abuse in her neighborhood. And now she's saying she has 2 Black adopted children. And she's saying she wants to leave America because there's so much racism in America. All right. But the irony, her latest movie, that she's promoting in this context, is this movie that is about a Fox newscaster and all of the women who were doing their kind of Me Too thing at Fox News. And so this is what they do. And Bombshell is a movie where she's advocating for people not sexually harassing women. And in this movie, she plays the actual Fox News Megyn Kelly. Megyn Kelly, and she actually interviews James Alefantis, who runs Kemet Pizza. All right, and she practically absolves him in this Kemet Pizza video. All right, and so here's the famous Kemet Pizza video. Not going to show it, I guess, but Charlize Theron is playing Megyn Kelly, who basically has this interview with Kemet Pizza John Alefantis, where she's telling him, she lets him recite his story from his perspective about Kemet Pizza and is essentially absolving him. So she's talking out of both sides of her mouth. She defends the sexuality and freedom of white women, really, and yet not children, right? Not pedophiles who molest children. So here she is, and she actually adopted a Black son. And here he is, tasting the snow cone of Sean Penn. Now, Sean Penn could be associated, always look at the consonants, with Pan, the god Pan, which is Pan playing the flute with the hoofs and all that kind of stuff, right? And so there's many images of them spending time together, going to various events. Okay. Their day having snow cones. They're having a family outing. But if we look at a lot of these pictures when she's out with her son, that's when he's very young. Okay. There he is as well. More pictures with her and Sean Penn. More pictures of her. But people were very concerned for a long time about this little boy because they said that she was verbally abusive, and there are photos of her out with him, and she always seems to be very angry with him. There are a lot of photos. See where in this one she's literally having a big fight with him. He's running away, fighting with her. All right. But it seems to me like this is some kind of initiation. There's another photo where she leaves him and goes into a restaurant and he's crying. But now she says that this year Theron revealed to the Daily Mail that her eldest child, daughter Jackson 7, is transgender. Theron said that while Jackson was assigned male at birth, her daughter revealed at age 3 that she was not a boy. So she transgendered this child. Okay? Hebrew child, very likely. So now she's got him in dresses. She brought in a sister, and you could see that there was a lot of images where she was favoring the daughter more than the son. And he's growing up with a female example for a strong parent. And so you see him out in the dresses, and you were seeing this progression. See, she's got him in the dresses. He seemed like got him in a pink pants, pink tutu. All right. He seemed to be just fine before, just a child disagreeing with his mother. Very boy, very masculine. And then starts dressing him in these outfits. And so shares a rare photo of her daughters. So one thing I want to say about these people is part of their religious and spiritual practices is that they cut themselves. They cut themselves. According to 2 Kings 18, it says, and it came to pass at noon that when Elijah, remember the prophet and his big showdown with Jezebel, he's having his showdown with the 400 prophets of Baal, and he mocks them and says, because they can't make fire come down from heaven. And so he says, cry aloud, for he is a god. Either he is talking, or he's pursuing, or he's in a journey, or pre-adventure, he's sleeping and must be awakened. So basically he's mocking them, saying, wow, is your God a man? Like, he's doing something else. He can't be all places at the same time. He has to go to and fro like the enemy. He can't be everywhere all the time like a true Elohim. Oh, he's sleeping because he's not an Elohim. He has to be awakened. Is he pursuing some other matter? Or maybe he's talking to someone else. All right? Maybe if you cry louder, he'll hear you because he's not everywhere all the time. That's basically what he's saying. He's defining what a true Elohim is, who is Yahuwah, right? And it says, and they cried aloud and cut themselves after their manner with knives and lancets, till blood gushed out upon them. And it came to pass when midday was past, and they prophesied until the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, that there was neither voice nor any answer, nor any that regarded them. And so why am I showing this to you? I'm showing you that they're really pushing in this culture and in Hollywood this habit of people cutting themselves. And so when we look at, there's all these stories, famous people who self-harm. Angelina Jolie and Johnny Depp and others have admitted to cutting themselves. I always felt caged, Angelina Jolie says, on why she was driven to cut herself. Demi Lovato admits that she cut herself and purged since receiving treatment, but she will continue her fight for recovery, so she struggles with cutting herself. And then Fiona Apple, it was after these biting reviews that she began scratching her wrists with her fingernails until her skin bled, which is one of the ways to self-harm. So apparently she had some trauma in her life, and she said this is the way to deal with it, right? How she dealt with it. Miley Cyrus, allegations that she engages in self-cutting. It began to emerge in May 2012 when pictures surfaced in the media showing definite cuts on her wrists. And so what she said is, I get fixated when I'm bleeding. I can see why they went in for bloodletting in medieval times, because it makes you feel a bit better. When I cut myself, the drama of it calms me down, says Russell Brand. Okay? So this is how you can identify these people. This is part of their culture. All right? So let's get into some more of these celebrities. Now, I'm not saying these are absolutely who these people are. I haven't met them. I don't know their definite genealogies. We all know the rumors and stuff that we've heard, and we've heard their studies on all of these celebrities being related. So, but their cultural habits seem to suggest a family type relationship. And so that's why I'm raising this. So let's get into some of these celebrities. And now next here we have Jason Momoa. Now Mem refers to like Queen Moo. Moo is associated with a cow, heifer, right? A heifer, sorry, not heifer, but a heifer, a cow, Queen Moo. And the religion and spirituality of the Hamites is to deal with the marine kingdom and water, Mem. In Hebrew, the letter Mem means water, chaos, nations, struggle, power, okay? And so we have Jason Momoa, and he has very much this protruding third eye in the forehead, which the fallen angels have. He's got that type in his forehead as well. And so he is a very typical Egyptian, and he played in roles. He plays a Horite type king in Game of Thrones. He's in Stargate Atlantis, all right? So we know that the Atlanteans were the people who dwelt in the land of Shinar between the gates of Gibraltar and the Americas, all right? In what they called Atlantis. He played Conan the Barbarian, as I said. He also has played a Native American leader because the Native Americans are descendants of Hamites, okay? So there he is with his now ex-wife. All right, and we went over all of this several times, the connection between the Archites and the Greeks, okay? The Archites are the Greeks. Now, just reviewing the celebrities again. So Bailey, Baal, Balaam, and we're going to review it again. This is the word that comes from the family of Beor. Okay, Beor was an Edomite diviner, famous because he was enlisted by Balak, king of Moab, to pronounce curses over the Israelites. The pronunciation Balaam reflects the Greek rendering of the name in the Septuagint. His exploits are related in Numbers. Of course, this is when Israel's coming out of the land, and he tries to curse them, and they send in and he has the Israelites worship Baal Peor. So this is another god who is Beelzebub, Balaam, Baal, right? And he was slain by the Israelites together with the kings of Midian in the course of a war against the Midianites. And of course, there is an Edomite king named Bela, right? Bela or Baal, right? Recorded in Genesis 36 and 32. So we see the association with Esau, Edom, right? And being related to Beor. Beor or Bor means pig, right? Some say that he was an Ammonite, but it's very clear the genealogy is there. Now here's where, again, the Gentiles have an identification with him because Esau, Edom mixed in with the Gentiles. And of course, the Shemites were all caught up with the fallen angel giants and Nimrods and everything. Aram got all caught up in that, and that's why Abraham had to leave his father's house, right? So our Armenians will say that they are related to Balaam. So from Aram did Balak import me, the king of Moab, from the mountains of Kedim. Okay? So there's an association there. So, and then of course in the Quran, it says he's associated with one of the prophets who is sent to the Arabs. Okay, and so we know that Esau, Edom married one of the wives of Ishmael. Okay, and so let's look and see where this name Bailey is landing. Okay, we have the Baldwin brothers. Now you see Baal is Baal, Bailey. Okay, there's also Black Baldwin out there, right? Famous author, but we're talking about the Egyptians here. So Baldwin is one of the names carried to England in the Great Migration from Normandy. So these were the Normans. So the Norman tended to dwell up closer to the center of the earth when they had to flee. That's where the Canaanites went, and they were living up north and close to the entrances to the waters of the abyss. Okay, so they went way up north and were dwelling up there, and that's why they're called Norman, right? And so the Norman conquest was in 1066. It was based on the Germanic elements bald, which mean bold, and wine, which means friend or protector. Okay, so that's the definition they're giving it, but of course that's associated with bald heads and Beelzebub and Baal worship. Okay, and so here's the descent of the Baldwin family. All right, you guys can read through that if you want. In Alsace, Baldwin of the Moles, Richard the Fearless, guardians of the youth of William the Conqueror. So again, it's Nords, right? And some of these people are, my relatives too, probably. Who do we have? We have all the Baldwin brothers, right? Here's their crest. It's got a dragon on top of it, right? A dragon on top. And so he was a chief justice of the Commons, William Baldwin in the 1500s, and a Jesuit native of, what do we always talk about? Cornwall. And so they trace themselves all the way back to the 1500s, and then the Baldwins, these ones here, are also descended from the Mayflower Flower Passage, okay? And then Alec Baldwin is the 13th generation of his family to be born in America. So this is Alec Baldwin. All right, and these are all the Baldwin brothers. Okay? When you see the word wit, it means white or witch. Witty. Okay? It refers to witches. And Malka is king. Okay? Even angel in some cases. So this is his Malkovich. He's a king witch, a warlock. Right? That's what the name would mean. I mean, I don't know for sure about these people, but he's, like I said, in this movie, he is literally, you're going to see in this movie, he's literally playing Ha-Satan. There's a huge, in the movie Valley of the Gods, here he is all wrapped up in his mummy outfit by all of these white Egyptians wearing white, the great white aliens, right, the fallen angels, and he's put in a tomb, and the mountain is destroyed that he lives in. And the mountain is destroyed that he lives. Spoiler alert, when you watch this movie, that's exactly what happens. He lives on. So he is he's playing a type of Ha-Satan. He often plays a type of Ha-Satan. Okay? When we look at John Malkovich, we see Malkovich is a Ukrainian name of Slavic origin, and here he is, the actor, producer, director. There was another publisher with the same last name, Ukrainian publisher, Ababa Halama is this publishing company. So you see Ababa there, right? And when we look at the word witch, we see Old English Wicca, right? Which is where witch can come from. And so Wicca, sorcerer, okay, wizard, all of these things are derived German Wiccan, all right? And so they try to say, well, wits or wicks is not associated with it. But when we look at the word witch hazel, we find the root wick, okay? So, or Wiccan is associated with witch, okay? So they say this isn't, but yet witch is associated with Wiccan and witchcraft when you look at the word witch. And so the word W-Y-C-H, so if it's W-Y-C-H, right? Even just the sound is associated with Wiccan and witch, and that in turn is associated with hags who make spells with hexes. And so we know the Hagarenes were a tribe of the Ishmaelites. Okay? So again, that's all pointing back to Egypt. All right, the mark, Bismarck. All right, so Ann Dunham, Barack Obama's mother, she's related to the Bismarcks. And they say so also that says we found common relatives not only with the Hitler family, which both, this is actually talking about both Trump and Obama are linked together closely to by multiple marriages within the last century, but also with Baron Nathan de Rothschild, a high-profile Jewish international banker and English politician, and Otto Bismarck, Germany's first chancellor, who is at the origin of the modern German state. So we're talking about, again, the Normans, right? So this is not talking about the Black Germans and the Byzantines and the Danites who left and were kicked out, but this is talking about, again, the Normans, all right? Obama's gene pool definitely predestinated him to be a great leader, they say, haha, with humor. And Obama also is a distant cousin of Dick Cheney and related to George Bush. Okay, so the white people who were into the Hegelian dialectic and the whole Trump thing and all of that stuff would just be like saying Obama's just the devil and Trump is good. But the reality is that they're related. They're families. It's not about race. You know, it's like it's not about race if the Jews are white, but it's about race when you find out that they're not, right? Although some of true Israel will have lighter skin, right? And may actually even be white, some of them. So that's for sure. So the family has its roots in the Altmark region, descending from Heribord Bismarck, the first verifiable owner of the name, mentioned in 1270 AD. All right? So that's the Bismarck. I'm not going to... So we already know who Obama is, and of course, Trump, right? And Dick Cheney and George Bush. So I'm going to create another association for Trump here, all right? And that is directly to the Amorites and the Huns. We already talked about the Amorites being the Huns. And so Trump's grandfather, Fred Trump, was originally from the Drump family, born in Karlstadt, Germany in 1869, okay? We have found that Fred Trump's great-grandmother's second cousin was married to Alistair Hoons in 1712. And this is where the ancestry of Adolf Hitler comes from. So here again, that would make Obama and the Rothschilds related to the Huns. Okay? All right, many scholars, ancestor of the Huns, many scholars have argued that Attila derives from the East Germanic origin. Attila is formed from the Gothic Gepedic noun atta, or father. So have you ever had atta bread, atta flour from the East Indians? Or have you ever had nan bread for noonie nanny seed? So atta, father, which means bread, right? Little father, all right? Or compare wolfa from wolf. So this is another name. Remember I mentioned before, wolfa was another association. Okay, little wolf. Again, back to Canaan, the dogs. Okay, the Grimm's brothers were related to these families who wrote all those dark fairy tales. The Grimm's brothers were part of the Gotthard Seven. Even in Canada, they have a group of 7 painters. The group of 7 refers to the 7 nations. And there's also, an international organization that is composed of 7 nations, right? And then Ami or Asi, Azizi, Aziza, right? This is Aziza and Sassoon are the Rothschilds. Same thing again. So Jewith Encyclopedia, Huna. The Huna are the Babylonians, Babylonian Amorites of the 2nd generation of the head of the Academy of Sura, born about 216. The Huns, Ami, Asi, honored Palestinian priests, and considered Huna as their superior. He was also styled one of the Black Babylonian Hastim. So you see these Arabic sounding words because the Arabs are primarily associated with Egypt. Even though Ishmael and Edom were descendants of Abraham, they moved towards, not all of them, of course, like I said in my last video, we see the redeemed among them, but they moved very largely towards their Egyptian roots. All right. Now here's another word that is associated with the Canaanites, and that is the word steers. Steers like cattle, right? And satyrs. Satyrs, dancing satyrs with the hoofed feet, right? So watch my Dragons of Arabia videos, okay? Because that goes into the Black Edomites and Egyptians and all that. We're talking about the white ones right now, okay? So the word for bull is far in Hebrew. Pharoh, Osiris, Pharoh, bull. So satyr, we're going to go into some more families here and some of these names. Satyr and steers. Steers is coming from the root word satyr. And so in our flat earth movement, we have Patricia Steers, referring back to satyr or bull. Steers family was found in Surrey, where satyr was a lord at the court of Elthred II, mentioned in the royal letters patent, also mentioned in King Canutes. So there we see Cain, Canute's reign. Steer was recorded as the ancestor of steer. The word satyr was an Anglo-Saxon word for battle, and not to be confused with steer, the animal. Steerart, also called Sturt, is a small village in Somerset, England. Geoffrey Steer was listed in the Pipe Rolls of Worcester in 1209, and later Robert Steer was listed in the Subsidy Rolls of Sussex. All right, so just some more. The Steers were a Newgate family of gentry in the 17th and 18th centuries. And one of its members was a rector of Newgate from 1610. So we see this is all after the fall or during the fall of the King James Empire, right? The Black Western Europeans or Shemites and Israelites. So Patricia Steer we have here, she's part of the Flat Earth movement, okay? But as I said to you in my videos, go watch my videos on the tree, okay? Because the shape of the earth it's both a ball and a tree. It's tohu and bohu, the tree of praise and life, secured to the house of praise and life, and secured to the depths, all right? So they create, though, a flat earth, all right? And she worked with these various people with the whole flat earth movement. Now, I think she's actually very sweet and personable. I watched her for quite a while. But, you know, with Robbie Davidson and all of these other guys, they put up this flat earth movement, was very much around the time of the beginning of the Hebrew awakening, to distract everyone from the Hebrew awakening as it started. And same with the whole Tartaria thing. These were both distractions to keep everyone's eyes off of the Hebrew awakening, okay? And the earth was proposed as a flat earth, or they talked about inner earth, but nobody ever gave the whole picture. And so if you watch my videos, I will give you the whole picture of the earth. And also, we have allegedly Dave is very much associated with these guys. He does not believe in Yahusha, and he's very much aware of my videos on the shape of the earth and the nature of the earth. But these people don't really talk about it. Okay, there's some that are starting to talk about it, but not really, because they're keeping it over there, because they wouldn't want to bring anyone over to my channel from among the Gentiles. Oh my goodness. So, so the Steers are in Australia, and yeah, so you can just freeze frame this and read it. I'm just giving you a general cursory look, all right? So not speaking against her as an individual, she's very sweet and all of that. But, you know, her parents were they had their own radio station. They were broadcasters. So that's communications. That's the tradition she comes out of. She owns a fashion store. She's very charming and all that. But, you know, we all know, and many people in the Hebrew Israelite movement talked about it, that the flat earth thing was a distraction during the awakening because it could have happened a lot sooner, right? All right, so I'm going to go now into this sunken place. I'm just making a little joke here. I used to really find myself going into this sunken place when I'd go over to my best friend Melanie's house, and she was Ukrainian, and she's the most lovely person, one of my best friends when I was a little girl. I have a lot of Ukrainian friends, so please don't be offended when I'm talking about the Ukrainians and saying these are Ukrainians and this is who they are, right? Because I've given you the whole picture on this, right? What Yah uses for, what Satan uses for evil, Yah uses for good, okay? So this is all part of his bigger plan of redemption. So don't take it personally. But anyway, so I go to my friends' places, especially my friend, this friend of mine, and her dad would be clipping coupons and talking about coupons, and it just put me in. And then there would be chips, really oily, plain chips. I would be offered a mayonnaise sandwich, or if they were making dinner, they would offer butter on white rice. And the combination of these elements, or even like potato salad, right? Like with mayonnaise, would send me into the sunken place. I would just be stunned and checked out by this combination of things. I hated mayonnaise, I hated butter on white rice, I hated potato salad, and most of all, I hated the discussion of coupons. It was like nobody could talk about what was really going on in life, but they could talk about coupons. That's a safe discussion. So it just made me feel dead and in the sunken place. So it's something I joke about a lot with my friends about what sends you into the sunken place. Safe conversation. So let's look at mayonnaise. Where does mayonnaise come from? Well, it comes from the Mayo family. The Mayo family, the Mao family, okay? All right, so again, these are the Egyptian origins of these family. The Mayo family is a U.S. family of physicians. We're going to go into this again. Near Manchester, England. They came to the U.S. again. This is all beyond 1600s, right? After they were taken there and then they were brought back. All right, that's the theory. That's what happened, I believe. All right, and he opened a surgical practice in Rochester, Michigan in 1863 and opened St. Mary's Hospital with his two sons and the Sisters of St. Francis with his elder son, William James. And he specialized in surgery of the abdomen, pelvis, and kidney, all right, and served as an administrator. Now, who's the god? The stomach, right? All right, Charles Horus was a gifted, now Horus, the god Horus, all right? So Horus is another name. Horites, Horus, okay? A gifted surgeon in all areas, originated modern procedures in goiter surgery, all right? So, and orthopedic surgery, okay? The Mayo Clinic. In 1915, the brothers established the Mayo Foundation for the Mayo Medical Education and Research, which offers graduate training in medicine and related subjects. Sorry, I cut that off. The Mayo Clinic. All right, so here's their heritage, and you can just check it out on here. So those are the Mayo brothers. All right, and who are they associated with? All right, that was them with Franklin Delano Roosevelt. All right. And these are Mayo Clinic stories. And so they have all kinds of books and stuff on the Mayo Clinic. So you can go and find it there at the Mayo Clinic site. All right, let's find out a little bit more about this Mayo. All right, so they migrated to England again following the Norman conquest. So these are the Nords again. 1066, that was the year. All right. King James was born in, I think it was 1566. Yes. They lived in Norfolk, and their name derives from a place of residence prior to the Norman conquest of England. Mayo, Normandy. Mayo, Normandy. Okay, and then they have a winery in Sonoma Valley, and they specialize in small batches of wine. Mayonnaise, all right? So there's also, because this is, we're going to talk about Hellman, we're talking about mayonnaise, all right? We're talking about the sunken place, white foods that take you to the sunken place, and then you have to get stomach surgery. All right, Hellman was first found in Essex. Again, Saxon influence of history coming after the Battle of Hastings. Now, who do we say was Hastings? One of the descendants of the Arkites, who was a very close friend of David. He was known as Hastings. All right, Battle of Hastings, 1066, Norman conquest. The language of the courts was French for the next 3 centuries, and the Norman ambience prevailed. But the Saxon surname survived, and the family name was referenced in the year of 1274 when William Hellman held lands. Okay, so again, Helen of Troy, Hellman and Helene, Hellenist. All right, we're talking about the Greeks, right? And so this is just their own little scrimmages within their own families. These are all still the Normans, right? And there are various spelling variations. Hellman, right? So there's Hellman, a politician, Republican Party delegate. Here, another Hellman. All right, Democratic. So right hand and left hand, right? Playing the Hegelian dialectic, the Hegelian dialectic, right? Hell and Gaul dialectic, right? Hegelian dialectic, right? Democratic Party, so Democratic Republican, Democrat Republican, right? And then, of course, communications. Midnight Cowboy, famous film, and Coming Home. So Academy Award-winning writers. And so we have what? Hellman's mayonnaise. We have Hellman's mayonnaise, okay? But Mayo is an Alto-Aztecian language spoken by about 40,000 people, Mexican Mayo or Yorme Indians who live south of the Mexican state of Sonora, okay? North of the neighboring state of Sinaloa, China, son of Canaan, Sinaloa, right? And so they have their recognized language. The language is partially intelligible with the Yaqui language, Jack's language. So these are the remnants of the language left over by Jacob, right? And people who may have stayed there or resettled there from the 10 tribes. And the division between the two languages is more what? Political, no surprise, right? From the historic division between the Yaqui and Mayo people. So the sons of Jacob or Isaac possibly, and the Mayo people. But here we're seeing Mayo originates what? From Aztecian. So this is Hamitic. So Hellman's mayonnaise. So the Hellenists were the Greeks, right? And so when we look at all of the architecture, when I show you the On and all of that kind of thing, the priests of On and Ontario and all kinds of things, again, we're seeing the Greek architecture. We're seeing the Greek archetypes, or we're seeing the Indian ones, right? And so that's how we're able to recognize these people and their culture. And so, of course, with Mayo, like I said, the Mayo Clinic, we also have Metro Goldwyn Mayer for Mayo, okay? And let's look at the Metro Goldwyn Mayer Company and the production company and what it wrought, okay? Metro Goldwyn Mayer, all right? Metro Goldwyn Mayer Studios. This is communications and warfare, right? And so Both Metro Pictures, all right, was founded in Jacksonville, Florida, and it was forerunner of Golden Mayer. The company produced its films in New York, Los Angeles, etc. Goldwyn Pictures was an American corporation operated from 1916 to 24, founded in 1916, okay? And then Louis B. Mayer Pictures was an American film company in the silent era, all right? So here we have also associated with them is Meyer Horowitz Productions, all right? Meyer Horowitz Productions. Let's look that up. Meyer Horowitz is actually, I think it's a production company in Canada. But anyway, so you have a combination of all of it, because when we go and we look at John Malkovich, Metro Goldwyn Mayer, or we look at Meyer Horowitz, we see the Mayo family, we see the Horites, and we see witches all at the same time. Those are my etymological and historical theories based on scripture of who these celebrities are and how they relate, their mythologies that they create in stories and communications relate to their forefathers, the fallen ones who created their own mythologies in the past, right, as a summary. And we're to remember that, you know, Yah used for good what the enemy meant for evil by grafting in the Gentiles. There were many, at least 3 or 4 of David's mighty men were outside of marriage law. They were giants and descendants of Canaanites, and how that's kind of how they found their lines, found their way into the Davidic lines or the Israelite lines. Also, you know, once again, this was all about the white Amorites. It's all about the white Amorites, Canaanites, giants, and Egyptians. I've done other series on who the Arabs are, who the black Egyptians, black Arabs, Asian Canaanites, all of that kind of stuff. Just other video, it's in other videos, so you have to watch those other playlists. This is all about the white Amorites, because these are the true Amorites, okay? Remember, the enslavers and persecutors of Israel were Ramses, the first and second descendants of Amalek, who were related to Eliphaz, and who were related to Esau, who had married in with Elon's daughter, the Canaanites. Okay, so that was who enslaved Israel: Esau, Edom, along with the Canaanites. And those were the people who did not know Joseph. So those are the enslavers today. Even now, as I said in my Arabs video, Tariq Nasheed has enabled the African, the Somali, and black Egyptians to return here for the final Babylonian kingdom that Israel, of course, will escape. Keep his commandments. And remember that his character is good, and that's what you keep your hope in. But it's just interesting how the enemy has kind of done these things in the world, and they still have to hold on to their genealogies because they still have to keep track of their people. So, family, I hope you enjoyed this series, and I'm going to move on now. But yeah, that's just some of our celebrities and some of the families who represent the Canaanite tribes and the Amorites, whose iniquity is almost at the full. Yeah, bless you, keep you, cause his face to shine on you, be gracious, lift the light of his countenance, and give you shalom.
I'm an American.
Oh no, oh no, oh no, 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 oh no.
Thank you, everyone, for your donations and support. It means a lot. And subscribe or simply become a member in TrueAllTruth.net to get updates on videos and educational materials.
Suba, Aleph, Yasharel, Yahweh. And may the Ruach HaKodesh lead you into all truth and show you things to come.
I'm giving records. recognition to the Most High Yahuwah, and giving thanks and praises for the many blessings I receive from His favor.